Hello and welcome to episode 2 of MMO Weekly on YouTube, presented as always by Metsmerized Online. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, along with Mike Mayer. Mike, how we doing?
Tired of West Coast games, but glad that Mets took the series anyway.
Yeah, no, I think all of our sleep habits are happy that the Mets will be getting out of the West Coast. They'll get into Central Time next, so that's not as bad. At least an hour behind, we can deal with that. But two great series wins for the Mets since the last time we were on the show. Took 3 out of 4 from the Giants, which I don't think anybody really expected, and just took 2 out of 3 from Arizona. The Mets are 5 for 5 in series so far this season. They're 12-5 overall. The pitching looks great. It's still timely hitting. Guys are picking each other up. Great to see Canna back in the lineup. Things are looking pretty good so far over in Metsland, Mike.
Yeah, like a lot of managers will tell you, the best way to have a good start or to have a good season is keep winning series, and that's what the Mets are doing. And like you said, it started off with the huge one against the Giants. Everyone going into this was, well, this is finally the Mets test. Yeah, so they played the Nationals, and the Phillies hadn't been playing very well either. So they played some weak opponents. So the Giants were that test where they had the best record in the National League. The Giants did coming into the series, and Mets took 3 out of 4. And yeah, it's tough to imagine. They ran into the buzzkill of Carlos Rodon. I guess you can deal with 3 out of 4 out of one of the best against the best teams in the league. So, yeah, it's tough not to think that could have gone any better. And there was Francisco Lindor had a monster series. That's the type of series that when the Mets traded for and extended him, that's what they were looking for, and it was good. Obviously, we're talking about an April series, but for them to take 3 to 4 against the Giants is impressive at any point in the season, and to do it like they did. They great pitching, like you said, some timely hitting. They showed power in the series, and they played defense pretty well too. And actually, in that series, the bullpen pitched well. So yeah, and then you get to Arizona, and again, they ran into one starting pitcher who pitched pretty well. But other than that, they played well. Again, timely hitting, um, some surprise power from James McCann, 452-foot home run. I think that shocked everyone.
Hitterish, according to Eric Chavez. He was real hitterish. Him and JD. He said they were going to break out. So I guess Eric Chavez knows something we don't. I guess it's a good thing they hired him to be the hitting coach.
Yeah, eventually other guys are going to have to hit, and McCann with the home run that game, and JD with the home run today. Yeah, those other guys are going to have to hit. Lindor and Alonso, Nimmo, all these guys are going to go through cold spells. That's just how it is. So you need other guys in the lineup because there's guys cold right now, like Escobar went really cold in this series. Canna hasn't done a ton since he returned from the COVID list. So yeah, McCann, even Nito got into the action the other day with a RBI hit. And Guillorme had 2 hits today after a horrendous start to the season offensively for him. So it's nice to see he's been better with no beard. Guillorme
Yes.
with no beard is a much better offensive player.
Yes, the slight beard. I think he said he's growing it right back after. It was a one-time thing, and by next week he'll probably have the full one back there. But I just wanted to touch on real quick, kind of what you're talking about, and even going back to the Giants series. It's just the Mets. They manufacture runs, and you talked about guys like from this past weekend in Arizona with Escobar and Alonso, who kind of went cold, but they had huge series against the Giants, right? Escobar finally broke out. Pete had a great weekend. Lindor, you mentioned, and DH Lindor, just absolute beast. I know they pay him to play shortstop. They might have to mix that in every once in a while, still, especially when he's struggling. But everyone picks each other up on this team. It kind of seems like, and even the manager sometimes. I wanted to kind of talk Giants real quick from that first game when Travis Jankowski was hitting with the a tied game in the ninth inning and less than 2 outs and a runner on third, and Brandon Nimmo was sitting on the bench, I thought I was going to have a conniption. I can't say the words on here that I wanted to. It worked out for Buck. Obviously, I know he played smooth criminal there and said, I wanted Nimmo to, lead off or start the inning on second to begin with. But I mean, that to me is a mute point. If you have Nimmo on the bench to win the game, you want him at the plate, not, trying to wait for him to use him as the ghost runner in extra innings. And even more so, Jankowski up there to swing. I didn't understand that at all. If he's going to be up there, he should be up there to squeeze because he's fast and he can bunt. Just kind of more things with Buck that I don't love, but they seem to be winning in spite of some things like that. And they're 5 for 5 in series and they're 12-5. So really, for all the gripes, I know you and I kind of nitpick him a ton. They're winning games and, they do the little things right. I think we really need to acknowledge the base running and the defense that's gone on. I mean, the pitching, we know, and obviously Scherzer was electric his first start at Citi Field, but, it's just they do the little things right. And I give Buck a lot of credit there on the coaching staff. I have to be honest. I've never seen a not in a long time, I guess, at least Mets team run the bases this aggressively. And at times it doesn't work out. I know Marte kind of had a bonehead play in game 2 in the Arizona series where he got thrown out trying to steal second with 2 outs when they were down a bunch of runs. But in general, they push the envelope and it works. You know what I mean? And it kind of, I go back to like the 2014, 2015 Royals. That's kind of how they were. I know when they played the Mets in the World Series, you really saw a lot of that. But, it's just a professional team in the regard of they're not out of it. They can score runs and bunches when they need to. But when, guys are pitching them hard, they can manufacture runs late in games when they need to. That's just kind of what I've seen so far. But, I wanted to maybe kind of get your thoughts there, what you're feeling with Buck so far. Like I said, I know we've been a little tough on him, but.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fine to kind of separate some things. I do think Buck has been a little rough in spots when it comes to in-game managing. There's no excuse for Janikowski being in that spot, and then even less an excuse for, like you said, swinging away. I mean, Janikowski's been a nice player for the Mets for what you would expect, but his offensive capabilities are extremely limited, and they're basically limited to stealing bases and bunting. So that's his best asset. So why not use it? And yeah, I mean, Nimmo should have been in that spot. There's a couple of different ways he could have played that inning, and I think he played it about as bad as you could, Buck. And I think even in the Diamondback series, there's a couple of weird spots, specifically the night they lost, that he had a lefty reliever come in and he still kept the lefty in the DH, and he had righties come in and still kept the righty in. I think that's one of the good things about the Mets is that they have Dom Smith and JD Davis as the DH option. So I think he's going to be more aggressive with pinch hitters, I think, going forward. But yeah, like you said, Bucks got to get a lot of credit for the way they've been doing the little things. They've done them right all year. They're obviously prepared for a lot of situations, and that's on Buck. I mean, we know that he's always aware of these situations and making sure the players are. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough to complain about when you're 12-5. So yeah, you got to give Buck and the rest of the coaching staff a lot of credit. I mean, Jeremy Hefner, the Mets still have the best starting pitching ERA. Without Jacob deGrom. So, I mean, Jeremy Hefner's got to get credit. And Eric Chavez, I mean, we haven't heard from him a ton yet. He seems like he's going to be one of the quieter guys with the media, which, I mean, whatever, that's totally fine. And so we haven't talked about, I don't think he's been talked about a ton, but I mean, obviously the Mets have been atop the league in getting on base all year. So that's a credit to Chavez, and they've hit well with runners in scoring position, and they've made some productive outs too, getting guys over. So yeah, I think overall as a coaching staff, you have to be pretty excited about what they've done for the Mets so far.
Yeah, shout out Jeremy Hefner, man. I don't know what magical dust he's sprinkling on these guys' arms, or bullpens, whatever, but the starting pitching's been incredible. Miguel had kind of a clunker last week against the Giants. It was really his first one, but still got it through 6 innings. They wound up winning the game. Scherzer obviously was brilliant in his debut at Citi Field, which was awesome. And then you had Bassett, who, he lost his start. Obviously, that was against Rondon, but again, he gave up 5 runs, but he pitched 6 innings. I think the biggest thing that I've seen so far, and you hear that at least for the kind of the bigger front end guys talking about is how, that they understand their job is to eat some innings when they're pitching. Sure, when Scherzer post game last week after his start against the Giants, and they asked, what his thoughts were going to his start, he said, pitch as many innings as possible. It's a doubleheader. I'm pitching the second game. I got to give the bullpen a rest. Bassett, same thing, gutted through 6 innings, gave up 5 runs, but helped out the bullpen. And same thing with McGill too in that first game. 4 runs in 6 innings. Obviously, the command wasn't there. Same thing for Bassett, but they gutted through. And that's what, professional major league pitchers do. And we haven't seen that in a while, I feel like, with the Mets. It's been a lot of guys that come up and are kind of opener types or really, can't give bulk innings. And in a long 162, you need to give your bullpen arm some sort of rest, especially when they're kind of up and down as the Mets have been. So I give them a lot of credit there.
Who had Carlos Carrasco on their bingo card as the first Mets starting pitcher to pitch into the 8th inning? I think terrific is about the only word you could use to explain Carrasco so far. I mean, he's throwing a ton of strikes. I put a tweet out the other day talking about just how good his changeup has been.
Yeah.
The movement he's getting on his changeup and the command that he's showing on his changeup. Yeah. I think for me, that's really the biggest thing I've seen, because his velocity is about where it was last year.
Right.
And there's not any huge spin rate differences. So I think what we're looking at is just command and comfortability. I mean, last year he was coming off an injury and he tried to ramp up really quick, and he just looks like a guy that is healthy and pitching to how Carlos Carrasco. I mean, he was a very good pitcher for Cleveland. So that's what the Mets are getting right now. And to get that out of your 4th or 5th starter just really deepens that rotation, and to get some more quality innings out of David Peterson.
Absolutely.
All he does is keep pitching well for the Mets so far this year. And I think actually with him, I do think part of that is we've seen an uptick in velocity. He's been 95, 96 in some of the games. And I think he needs that little bit of extra, because he's not a guy that has a ton of movement on any of his pitches. And sometimes he struggles with his command a little bit. So I think when we see him 95, 96, that's a good sign for him to be successful. And he keeps pitching well. I know he got optioned to the minors simply because they needed some arms, but it's great to have David Peterson as your 6th, 7th starter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's been tremendous, and even times to come out of the bullpen, either in relief as kind of a long man, like you said, he's just coming out, he's pumping strikes. He's sitting a little higher, velocity wise, like you said. His slider looks very good. When he has command of that pitch, it seems like it's a great weapon for him. And as far as Carrasco is concerned, I agree with you. Obviously, he looks healthy, and it looks two things really. He looks like he has his legs underneath him when he's pitching, which obviously he didn't have last year with the hamstring injury. And he also looks like he's throwing the ball free. Like he's not worried about throwing certain pitches. I know last year he also had kind of the elbow thing that he was worried about throwing his curveball and stuff like that. And he got that cleaned up in the offseason. But he just looks like a guy, like you said, he's not thinking about health, not worried about, if he's going to injure himself, but just worried about pitching and executing. And he, had a lot of high leverage pitches in his start in that last game against the Giants, and got out of it. Like you said, the changeup was tremendous. A lot of 3-2 accounts that he used that changeup in. I think like 2-3 different times, if I remember correctly. Just looks confident. It's the whole staff really. We've talked about it before, whether it's on the podcast or here, how the pitchers all kind of congregate together after each one of the, each other starts and talk and kind of have their little powwow. And I love that SMY has made sure to show those shots after kind of every start. It's awesome to see. You can tell that these guys, not only are bought in, with the Mets and the organization, but just kind of with each other and pushing each other to get better and to learn. And that's what good teams do and good players do. So that's been an awesome sight to see.
Yeah. I mean, even they showed Max Scherzer maybe getting into some managing with him talking to Buck the other day.
Yes.
For an extended period. Yeah. I mean, it's great. It's great to see these guys communicating and like they showed him on the iPads bringing up stuff. And yeah, I mean, all you can do is get better by learning from guys like Bassett and Carrasco, Scherzer. They've thrown so many major league innings and been in different situations. So for them to be there to help McGill and Peterson and other guys in the pitching staff, it's been impressive to see. And it's good that what the Mets did, not just with the pitching staff, but like we talked about with the offense and doing the little things. I mean, that's what the Mets went out to do. They went out and got veteran guys in Marte and Escobar and Canna and Bassett and Ottavino and some others. That's why they went out and got these guys. And they've mended together perfectly to this point, obviously.
Absolutely. And I also want to, he's not a starter, but real quick, Jolie Rodriguez has been good his last few outings. It's been nasty against lefties. He's also been getting righties out his last couple of times out. So I want to, give him credit there because I thought that trade was long lost. But it's looking like maybe there's still some second life there. So I, want to give him credit where it's due. But I kind of want to spin this, talking about veteran players, good veteran players. There's one veteran player on the Mets that hasn't been very good, and his name is Robinson Cano. Mike, he looks like he's completely lost. I don't know. There's no bat. We've talked about there's no bat speed there anymore. I don't, Keith says that he sees that there is. I disagree. Seems as though he swings over the top of every single breaking ball that you throw. I tweeted to you the other day as a joke that give him a couple hundred more at bats, he'll finally figure it out. But cuts are looming with May 1st. The rosters come down. Do you think that the Mets could? I don't want to say like the impossible, only because of the contract. But you think that they could actually finally cut bait with him with the start that he's had?
I mean, they're getting to a point, like you said, with the roster cut downs. They have to get rid of a pitcher because they have too many pitchers. So I don't think they want to get rid of two pitchers.
Right.
And mostly because like the guys are going to have to get rid of, a lot of them don't have options. So you run into losing guys on waivers and stuff. Right. So there's a good chance that you want to get rid of a pitcher and a position player.
Right.
Well, so you look at, what are they going to do with the position player? I mean, the obvious player, if you're just putting Cano and saying there's no way they're just going to keep him, is Janikowski.
Right.
And he's played an important role.
Right.
He's played in defense a bunch of games, good defensive plays. He's got on base, some stolen bases. I mean, he is what he is. He's a fifth outfielder. I'm not going to keep banging the door for him or whatever, but I think right now you can make a legitimate argument that he has more value to the Mets than Robinson Cano does. So if it's not Janikowski, then you're talking like you'd have to trade someone, like put Dom Smith back on the trade table, JD Davis, one of those two guys, because Nito's not going anywhere, a bench player. Luis Guillorme is not going anywhere. So, yeah, then you're Smith, Davis, Janikowski. I think the Mets have to be serious about cutting Cano. I think that's what their option is. And I think it is for a lot of reasons. One, he's not playing well. And there isn't any signs of, he's not playing well, but yeah, he could be doing this.
Right.
I know he's hitting the ball pretty hard if you look on Baseball Savant, but then you break it down and most of that stuff is on the ground.
Yep.
It's not line drives. It's not fly balls. So we're not talking about, he's getting unlucky on fly balls or line drives. So we could see some more power from him or whatever. The power is still non-existent for the most part. And we've seen it on defense too. We've seen some plays where he's hurt the Mets on defense. I mean, he basically looks like he has the mobility of a fire hydrant.
Hydrant might be more mobile, but yeah.
Yeah, and then so where else? He can only play second base. I know they toyed with first base, but when is he ever really going to play there when you have Dom?
Right.
So, and they have enough options at DH. So I think you're talking about productivity, and then how he just makes it so the Mets are really shorthanded on what they can do option-wise. It really handcuffs Buck when you have a guy that's basically a one-position player that can't do any other positions, and he doesn't. I mean, obviously, he's not a pinch runner, any of that. So he really limits you. Um, I haven't heard anything like on the Mets end,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to believe if they're serious about winning this year, and they're serious about putting the best players on the team. Come a week from now, and Cano is still got an OPS around 500, and his bat still looks slow, and he still looks slow in the field. That he's got to be the best option to get rid of. But like you said, there's a monetary. There's a
Right.
monetary. You're paying the guy 20 million this year and 20 million next year. So this is obviously something that Cohen's going to have to sign off on. Um, and we don't have any indication of how he's going to do or what he would do in that situation. But it's going to be a question that keeps getting the next day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's just going to get bigger and bigger question, especially if he keeps struggling.
Yeah, no, and you kind of took the words out of my mouth there. I agree with you that Jankowski is the guy. That's the other kind of would be the other fringe position player to cut. But he brings something to the table. He's a plus defender and he has speed on a team that seems as though now prides itself on versatility as a lineup of versatility. Robinson Cano is not that. So to your point, if it's a baseball decision and they're trying to make this team better, come May 1st, he should no longer be on the New York Mets. They should eat that $40 million and hopefully they go along their merry way. I know it might not be the case because, again, financially, it's a lot, to eat like that. But, Steve, you could sell a painting maybe or two. You'll make that right back, then some, and then you could sign somebody else. So it doesn't really even matter. So it's not that big of a deal. I think definitely if we can, let's not have Robinson Cano on the Mets ever again. You can bring him back at Old Timers Day in August. He can get some swings there if you want. Since you're already be paying them, maybe do like a joint Bobby Bo and him thing, give them their checks and then kick them in the butts and get them out. But yeah, hopefully come May 1st, Robbie Cano now it will be an afterthought and a joke, but I guess we'll see what happens there. But kind of moving on from that and, going to previewing the series ahead in St. Louis, we got some good pitching matchups. Obviously, Scherzer's pitching tomorrow, Bassett the next day, and then I believe Carlos Carrasco will pitch the finale of that series. Cardinals, good team as always. Nolan Arenado, monster, potential, NL MVP. It's got like a 1,500 OPS. I'm not shocked. Pujols, Molina, Wainwright, all on the same team again. I thought I was in a time machine. But the Cardinals are the Cardinals. They play the Mets tough. We don't like them. Mike, well, let me, get your thoughts on the preview here.
Yeah, like you said, as we tape, this is the Cardinals are 9-4, playing well. Yeah, other than Arenado, Pujols and Tommy Edmonds had a monster year for them. So you're looking at Arenado and Tommy Edman, and Pujols has actually been like their third best hitter. Let's see how sustainable that is. But yeah, they got Wainwright just keeps on going, and the rest of the pitching staff's been pretty good. They have a pretty good bullpen, pretty good defense. And Wednesday we're going to see Steven Matz, who's pitched well after a bad first start. So that'll be interesting to see how the Mets do against him. I think and I was looking at schedule of these weird 7:40 starts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Mets could take 2 or 3 of those. It's tough now to just think of, well, yeah, of course the Mets are just going to take 2 or 3. But yeah, they have the pitching matchups that look pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is going to be another tough series. The Cardinals are the second best team they've played this year, and they're a good all around team. So it'll be a tough series, and it'll be interesting to see how they deal with Arenado.
Absolutely. Don't pitch to him.
Yeah, and maybe true or not true, without looking at the stats, it feels like Goldschmidt always hits the Mets pretty well.
That's true. That's a good point too. He always, I guess in little time in Arizona, now that they played him more with the Cardinals, he always does seem to hit the Mets well.
So maybe he wakes up. He hasn't been great to start the year, but between Edman, Goldschmidt, Arenado, and Pujols, and Tyler O'Neill, they have a pretty good start of the lineup right there. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
That's right. Tyler O'Neill, the largest forearms in baseball. The man holds the bat. It looks like almost parallel, and he just like throws the knob at the ball and it goes 500 feet. I think he just eats protein powder 24/7. Also, Paul DeYoung's a Met killer. People
Yep.
forget about
Yep.
him, I feel like, but he always kills the Mets since he's got called up. He's been like Ozzie Smith when he plays them. And, Steven Matz, that'll be interesting. I know he's got like a 5.5 ERA. Hopefully, he's that guy when they see him on Wednesday and he does his, typical implosion that we all came to know and love. But it'll be another test. The Mets, they've been up to it so far. It's tough winning every single series, but like you said, we're kind of getting used to it. So hopefully, the starting pitching can hold up. Another thing too, I was about to say, hopefully Scherzer can start the series with a win. The Mets seem to be doing that a lot too. They seem to be winning their opening series every one, and that's huge. Because you can put out a Trevor Williams or whatever in a game too if you gotta you're not throwing the game necessarily, but you're not putting your best out there. But winning opening games this year is so big because it sets you up for success no matter what. The next 2 games down the road. So the Mets have been doing a lot of that, and hopefully Scherzer can keep that rolling for them. So we're going to transition now, from the big league club down to the Mets farm, like we usually do on the Get Mesmerized podcast. Last week, we had Director of Baseball Development Bryan Hayes on the show, and it was actually an awesome interview. He gave us a lot of in-depth information just as far as the addition to the analytics department. It went from 3 now to 43, just kind of their approach and, how their philosophies now, with the organization. There's a lot to be excited for from talking to him, Mike. I wanted to get kind of your thoughts after we were able to speak with Bryan last week.
Yeah, I had a terrific time talking to Bryan. And like you said, just from a number standpoint, I mean, it was widely reported that like 5 years ago that the Mets were bottom of the league with 3 guys in the research and development department, and now they're up to 43 folks now. And that's not just like Bryan was talking about. It's not just in the major leagues. They have coverage in the minor leagues too, and that's kind of where he helps trying to get that communication between the minor leaguers and the big league staff and all of that. That's kind of his part. And yeah, and it was impressive to talk to him about how the Mets really, I always keep on coming back to the Rays when I think about this, because this is what the Rays do so well. Is the Rays are great at developing players, but it's not just making them good players. They also have a winning mentality in the minor leagues, that they consistently are in the top 5 in winning percentage in the minor leagues. And it's obviously come through to the big leagues for the last decade. So I think that's what the Mets are really trying to instill right at a grassroots level. And it's good to be able to try to do that and to be on the forefront of the analytics too, and have one of the bigger departments in baseball, so that it's a good marriage of these 2 important things in baseball right now. And yeah, it'll be exciting to see. Obviously, we're in the very early stages of both of these, having the big analytic department and having the Mets bringing in a bunch of new people and focusing on the minor leagues and the development. And we'll have to track it the next couple of years and just to see just how good they do. And it was fun to talk to him about certain players. He talked up the draft that they had last year with a lot of the arms that are pitching well, which we'll talk about once we hit St. Lucie on our roundup. And Francisco Alvarez, I mean, what did he call him?
I believe he called him. He looked like a Ninja Turtle walking up to the plate with a baseball bat.
Yeah,
That was the phrase?
yeah. And yeah, I mean, it just shows like this isn't just Mets fans that get excited when they're talking about Francisco Alvarez. Like, this is the type of prospect that we're talking about, that everyone in the organization is excited about this kid too. He struggled a little bit this week. I guess Alvarez is human. We all are, I guess.
Shocker.
And his OPS is only a little over 1,000 now.
They should trade him.
Yeah,
should trade him for a closer.
Yeah, it was a great interview with Hayes. Please go check it out, folks. We're talking about a very small portion of the 45 minutes that we talked to him, and there's a lot of great info in there about just the Mets process in general.
Yeah, no, you hit on it, but the thing that I took away from all that was he just kept emphasizing how important communication was, and it went along with when we interviewed a few weeks back Chris Newell, the bench coach for the Brooklyn Cyclones. He mentioned just kind of the same thing as far as how strong the communication is through the organizations, from the coaches to the players, and also from the analytics departments to the players. And he feels that that's the biggest difference between teams that use analytics successfully and don't, and how they digest and communicate out that information to their players and have it, used successfully. And it's awesome to hear that they're emphasizing winning along with development. I think we made the point to say that's what the Mets were doing in the mid '80s, early to mid '80s when they kind of had their come up, and were the Dwight Goodens, Dow Strawberries of the world. Davey Johnson, I was the manager, but just kind of winning down to the minors and having that attitude, coming up to the major league. So it's always going to take a couple of years to see this implemented, like you said, but it's going to be really cool to track. And it seems like there's a lot of good things ahead for the organization with the developmental level.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll jump right into the minor league roundup and start at Syracuse this week because, hey, they started the week with one win and they've won 5 times this week.
Wow.
So quite a turnaround for them. And a lot of it is on the shoulders of a very large man named Daniel Polka.
Okay.
Who
He
had
is large.
3 home runs this week, 4 walks. He's got 5 home runs for the year. And I think he's kind of an interesting guy. Obviously, we're talking about getting rosters down. We talked about getting rid of Cano, but say Dom Smith gets injured,
right,
and they want someone who can play first base and the outfield instead of Nick Plummer and Khalil Lee are just outfield only guys. Polka would be that guy. He's not on the 40-man roster, but he plays first base and the outfield, and he has major league experience. This is a guy that had 27 home runs in the big leagues for the White Sox 4 years ago. He's got an OPS over 1,000. He's just hitting the crap out of the ball, right? I mean, obviously he's not like the same type of caliber player as Alonso, but we're talking about he's got that raw power and the big exit velocities, kind of obviously on a lower level from Alonso. But yeah, he's a guy to keep an eye on for if they do need a player. And the other person I'd talk about is lefty Alex Claudio. We saw him in spring training. Had the Mets not traded for Joely Rodriguez for their second lefty, there was a chance that Claudio could have made the team. He's got a 1.13 ERA right now in AAA Syracuse. So another guy like Shreve or Rodriguez, if they go down, it's nice to have a veteran option like Claudio right in AAA. So keep on going to Binghamton. We talked about Alvarez. He kind of struggled a little bit this week, but he's going to have bad weeks. It happens. Like I said, he's still got an OPS over 1,000. And but Beatty and Mauricio have kept hitting. Beatty's hitting 354 with a 957 OPS. Keep hitting doubles. I think he was second in the league in doubles coming into today. And Ronnie Mauricio keeps showing the power too. That those two guys are impressive. I mean, I think it kind of showed this week with Alvarez struggling a little bit how good they've been, so that you can track them, because obviously for a while all the talk was about Alvarez and the fact that just got kind of hidden that Badio and Mauricio are actually playing well too. So it's impressive to see how those guys have continued to play well. Going down to Brooklyn, it's the opposite when we're talking offense with Brooklyn. They have a 580 team OPS. Folks, that's still higher than Cano's OPS, but still well below the league average. So, they're struggling to score runs. Rowdy Jordan, pick from last year from Mississippi State. He's got a 877 OPS. He's the only guy over 800 there. He's leading off and playing center field most of the time for them. So he's playing well. But on the flip side, they do have the best ERA in the league at 2.75. And it's not like what we're going to talk about in St. Lucie, where they get all these big picks and these big prospects. This is mostly that 2.75 ERA is mostly guys that they've got on minor league free agents. They've got out of indie ball. They've gotten late rounds. So it's a really interesting pitching staff, and have to give credit to AJ Sager, the pitching coach there, former big leaguer. He's obviously saying the right things, doing the right things, and the guys are pitching well. And then lastly, going to St. Lucie, they're still playing pretty well. And the pitching, we talked Bryan Hayes a lot about last year's draft. And one thing he talked about was they simply drafted big human beings.
Yes.
And one of those big human beings pitched today.
Nice.
Carson Seymour, 6th rounder from last year. He was up to 96 with his fastball today and 91 with his cutter. He got 10 whiffs on his fastball today, which is very impressive in 4 innings. So he's got 9 scoreless innings so far this year. 6'6", 260 is what they have. Is what they have him listed at. That's a big human being. Nick Zwack, another pick from last year, 17th rounder. I mean, he's only 6'3", 230 for a lefty. I say only. I guess next to Carson Seymour.
Yeah, right.
Small. But he's got 15 strikeouts in 8 innings now for them. He was up to 94, which is, pretty impressive for a left-hander.
Right.
And yesterday, Calvin Ziegler pitched again, their 2nd rounder, and he had 6 swing and misses in the first inning.
Wow.
Which is just, when Scherzer has a good outing, he has like 16, 17, 18 in an entire outing.
Right.
And Ziegler had 6 in the first inning.
Wow.
He had 7 strikeouts in the outing in 3 innings. So he's continued to be impressive with fastball that's been up to 96, hammer curve, and he's mixing in a split change in the high 80s too. So he's an impressive guy. I know if you listen to the interview we did with Bryan Hayes, he talks about Ziegler a little bit and how they went about getting him and talking to him. So everything's still going pretty well in the minor leagues right now. Like last week we talked about, the only team that was really struggling was Syracuse, and they ripped off 5 wins this week. So
there we go.
It was a good week in the minors, and hopefully next week is 4 more home runs for Alvarez. He gets back into the home run column.
Yeah, there we go. Good week in the minors, good week in the majors, good week all around for the Mets. So that's good to hear. That's probably going to wrap it up for this week's show. Tune in next week. We'll recap the St. Louis series, the Philadelphia series, and then we'll preview the series with the Braves coming to town next week. Should be a lot of fun. A lot of early tests here, and at least gauntlet racking up. So it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully the Mets can pull it out. But until then, thank you for watching the show. We'll catch you then. Let's go Mets.